So this is the question for today that you have to answer in a paragraph using the race strategy. We'll go over that a little bit too, just as a refresher. So the question is, how does chapter 12 contribute to the development of the novel's new setting? What does it mean by contributes? We've went over this word a couple times. So what does it mean by how does chapter 12 contribute? What does contribute mean? Go ahead and just turn your mic on if you want to answer because I can't see my screen right now.
Contribute means like add on or...
Perfect. Absolutely. So how does chapter 12 add to? We could change this to. And what does development mean? I think this word development right here is really what could be confusing because it's not a word we use very often. So what does it mean by how does chapter 12 add to the development of the novel's new setting? What do you think it means by development? Someone other than Chad, since he answered already. If you're developing something, what are you doing?
Making it grow.
Okay,
And
making it grow.
Make it continue to do something.
Absolutely. Good job, Carson. So you're making it grow or you're like building it, right? So how does chapter 12 add to the growth of the novel's new setting, to the author building the novel's new setting? So what this question is really asking you is how does chapter 12, let me reword that. What does chapter 12 tell you about the novel's new setting? It's as simple as that. I just put it in a little bit more challenging way. So all this question is asking you is how does the author develop or build the setting in chapter 12? And in order for an author to develop a setting or build a setting, they have to be telling you about that setting because you can't actually see it, right? So they have to describe it to you and tell you what's going on. So for this question, you're going to tell me, how does our author show you what's going on in this setting and how it feels to be in this setting? How are they making that setting visual to you? Does that make sense? I think that might have been a little confusing. All right, while I think about that, I'm going to just go over the instructions for today's assignment a little bit as well, just so you can see how I set this up and gave you some examples on how to use the race strategy. So the questions here, of course, I just have the date in front of it. You're asked to answer the question above in a complete paragraph, which that means at least 3 sentences, using the race strategy, which means you need to restate the question, answer the question, cite textual evidence, and explain what your textual means and how that evidence supports your answer. So right here on the instructions, I reminded you what each of these means, and I gave you a sentence starter or a sentence frame to help you write your paragraph. So really, if you want to, you can use these sentence starters and plug in your answer just to help you get used to writing that structured paragraph that presents your answer in a really, really clear way. So I reminded you, be sure to restate and answer. This is going to be 10 points. And this is what it means to restate and answer. It means to use keywords from the question to create a statement that clearly presents your answer. So that's going to be your topic sentence. And I gave you an example and told you that you can use this sentence starter. And I just wrote chapter 12 contributes to the development of the novel's setting by. And then you would plug in your answer. I didn't give you the answer. I just gave you the starter. So this is the restate question, or restate step, and then you just have to add in your answer. Then for textual evidence, that's going to be 5 points. You have to use at least one piece of textual evidence to support your answer. Make sure, remember, when you're including that textual evidence, that you tell me where you found it. It needs to be clear where you found that textual evidence. So my example was, for example, on page 123 in paragraph 6, the author writes. So there I told you exactly where to find the quote I'm about to talk about. That way, you, my reader, are clear that whatever I'm about to say are not my words, but they're the author's words. So we're making sure to give the author credit for what they wrote. And then your explain step. This is where most people get a little tripped up or just skip it. You can't just leave that quote hanging. You have to tell me why you used it. So you need to explain what your textual evidence means and how your textual evidence supports your answer. You may use this sentence starter, and I gave you 2. You could say this statement explains that Birmingham is, and then tell me what does that tell you about Birmingham? What has the author showed you about Birmingham in that quote that you just chose that supports your answer? Or this shows the reader that, and tell us what it's showing you as a reader. The first example I gave you yesterday was a simile talking about how Birmingham is like an oven. So I might say that this shows the reader that it's really hot in Birmingham. And so it supports the answer that, so it supports that this chapter tells us a lot about the weather or climate in Birmingham because it's explaining how hot it is or showing us how hot it is. And then the last part of the instructions are just that I'm on Zoom right now. So does anyone have any questions about today's assignment? I know I might have confused us more than I helped us. After I said it out loud, I kind of confused myself. So